Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show on this Friday, November 29th, 2013, the Friday after Thanksgiving, or as it's now being called, Gray Thursday or Black Thursday. There's a lot of craziness going on out there, as you know. If you're driving around, if you're looking at any of these shopping centers, we're going to be talking to several people today about this. We're going to have Alex Jones at the bottom of the hour breaking this down for us. We're also going to be talking to Anthony Gucciardi and taking your calls in the second hour. We've got Mark Dice coming on the show later. He's got a video right now that's top linked on Drudge and is on Infowars.com. Santa with a megaphone shames Thanksgiving parasite shoppers. That's a pretty funny video. We've got a video from Paul Joseph Watson that we're going to be playing in the next segment. And it's a real interesting video because what he's got mixed in there is scenes of people shopping on Black Friday, on Black Thursday, otherwise known as Thanksgiving, formerly known as Thanksgiving. He's got these scenes mixed in with zombie movies, and it's pretty indistinguishable to take a look at it. So if you're listening to us on radio, I'm going to describe some of that for you. But if you're watching, stay tuned for that because that's really funny. And then we're going to have Paul Watson in the third hour. So there's a lot of news here, but we've got some updates to some stories that have been happening in just the last week. You know, this is a constant trend of the government going through and looking at our data. We've heard so much about the NSA from Ed Snowden's leaks. But it's not just the federal government that's doing it. And, of course, the federal government is training local law enforcement and state law enforcement to act the way that they act. Now we have a report here that's also on Drudge. This is from Mikhail Thalen, and it's on Infowars.com. South Carolina police grab innocent cell users' data through tower dumps. That's what they call it, a tower dump. It allows them to grab all calls, all text, all data transmissions from any specific time from a cell tower's provider. Now, this is being done by the Richland County Sheriff's Office, and they're turning over everybody's telephone data to the police, unrelated to any suspicion of crime, according to First Amendment attorney Jay Bender. He says, I think that's an unreasonable search and seizure. Well, absolutely. What they're doing is they're grabbing metadata, and that's important. You can tell what people are doing. You can track their movements. Just last month, the Senate Judiciary Committee, the article goes on to say, hearing revealed that a 2010 NSA pilot project that used cell phone towers to map people's locations unknowingly. That's your metadata. If they look at your metadata, they can tell where you're traveling. They can tell what your political, religious affiliations are. They can totally profile you. And in most societies, in a free and open society, that wouldn't be a problem. But when you've got a government that wants to control you and wants to ignore the law themselves, that says at the same time they claim that they have a right to look at everything that you do, they're also saying you have a right to look at nothing that they do. You don't have any rights to see what our government is doing. They're totally opaque. There's absolutely no transparency, and yet they demand to see everything that we do. That's why you should be concerned about metadata. And it's also why you should be concerned about the definition of what's reasonable. You know, it doesn't just mean that it's something that's not out of the ordinary, because the government is always moving that normalcy bias. What it means is they don't have a reason. They don't have a reason to grab your cell data. They should not be allowed to, and it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Now, quickly, just before the break here, we've also got an update on drunk driving. You remember they were taking people's breath. They wanted voluntarily, according to the NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, they wanted to voluntarily take people's blood or breath in Fort Worth. And initially, the Fort Worth Police Department said that wasn't going on. They then had to admit that it was, but it was just part of a study. Well, it turns out that, of course, this study is going to be used to justify lowering the definition of drunk driving from 0.8 to 0.05. That's what they're really trying to push. This is an agenda from the federal government that they're trying to push on us. That's why we need to push back. That's why we need to have juries, as we mentioned the other day, that look at the definition of drunkenness, because the legislature is not going to do it, and actually make sure that justice is being done. We need some oversight of what the government is doing. Juries provide us with that. It's one of our best defenses. We'll be right back. We got a big show today on the madness of crowds, so stay tuned.
Jones.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. We will have Alex at the bottom of the hour. He's going to be talking about the craziness that's going on this Black Friday. We're also going to be joined later in the show with Anthony Gucciardi. He's going to come in. We're going to take your calls in the second hour. Mark Dice, who has a top-linked video that is on Infowars.com. It's on the Drudge Report. Santa with megaphone shames Thanksgiving parasite shoppers. So you got to see that. We're going to talk to Mark Dice about that. He put on a Santa Claus outfit and bullhorned shoppers who've been waiting all night for specials on Black Friday. And that kind of brings up, as we see what's going on with that and we see what's going on with Bitcoin, what does it really mean? How do you really assess value? And what does it say about our society when we see these types of things happening at Walmart, people fighting each other over TVs or toasters, and we see these knockout games happening in the urban centers? What do you think is going to happen if things get really tough in this society? But first of all, how do you assess value? Let's take a look at Bitcoin. You know, it was just about a week ago or maybe 10 days ago that it was about $400. It passed gold in value momentarily today, just in the last 24 hours. We have an article up on Infowars.com. Bitcoin worth more than gold, then collapses. Well, it's still about $1,160, I think, with gold being a little over $1,200. Articles are coming out from Forbes magazine comparing it to South Sea bubble territory. And they said it looks like the same sort of bubble that we see now. If you don't know what the South Sea bubble is, it's a classic bubble. It was explored in the book Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. It's written in the early 1800s. And it's when we see exponential price and then immediately dropping in value. And that's what people are concerned about with Bitcoin. It suckered in a lot of very smart people. In the South Sea bubble, it suckered in Isaac Newton. Now, Isaac Newton was a pretty intelligent person. He invented calculus. He worked out the tides, came up with equations for the tides, something nobody else had done before. Very intelligent guy, but he got suckered in to the stock market. This is a situation where the South Sea Company had been given a monopoly on all trade with South America. Now, you would think that's a pretty sure deal. And a lot of people did. But then they started doing crazy things. In a sense, you could kind of say there was a lot of speculation like derivative market that we've seen. And it got out of hand. And the beginning of it, it looked exactly like what we're seeing now with Bitcoin. Bitcoin starting out at $400 and over the weekend, last weekend, I think it went up to like $500 or $600, then jumped to $800, $900, then $1,200. It's going straight up. And if you look at this graph that's on the article, comparing it to the price of gold, it's absolutely amazing. But pull up this article, guys, for people who are looking at it. This is the one showing Isaac Newton's nightmare. It's how he went broke. And basically, it's the upward curve. It just goes straight up exponentially. Not like climate change. That's what they would like us to think is going up exponentially. That's not. That's staying flat. But this is a real exponential curve, just kind of popping along. And Newton invests a little bit at the very beginning, and then he gets out as it jumps up. And so they've got a line here. Newton exits very happy. But then he waits a while, and it's just going straight up. And it says Newton's friends are getting rich. So now he re-enters. But unfortunately, he re-enters now at about the top of the bubble. The bubble bursts. He's optimistic, thinking that it's going to come back because, after all, the South Sea Company has a monopoly on all trade to South America. And that's the way these bubbles always start out. And then he exits at the bottom without any money, totally broke. So it remains to be seen. Bitcoin, just like the South Sea bubble, has a lot of real value to it. These cryptocurrencies do, but it's not just Bitcoin that's going up. One of the signs that it's a bubble is the fact that all these other cryptocurrencies are also going up exponentially at the same time. That's a sure sign, according to this Forbes article, that we are in a bubble. But it brings up the real question is, how do you evaluate real value? How do you evaluate real value when you're shopping on Black Friday? And as many studies have pointed out, they're making more money, obviously, in the fourth quarter because they're selling more, but their profit margins are higher. Their profit margins are 22% higher in this quarter, and they're making more money. Prices are higher for many items on Black Friday than they are even in the rest of this quarter, in the rest of the holiday season. So by pulling in and doing what the crowd is doing, that's really what that Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds is all about. You get suckered into that. Just like you kind of got, a lot of people got suckered in, not our listeners probably, but a lot of people got suckered into Obamacare. You know, it's we see that its prices are going up exponentially. The difference is, though, is that it's not really your choice. You're being put in there. So it's kind of like popular socialism and the delusion of dictators is what we've got going on with Obamacare. But people are buying into this Black Friday madness. And Paul Joseph Watson has done a really funny video that's up on Infowars.com. I believe it's red-linked at the top or near the top. And it compares zombie movies to what we see happening in Walmart. Let's take a look at that, and I'll narrate it for people who are listening on the radio. It says actual footage of zombie plague sweeping America right now. This is Walmart. Giant crowd fighting over boxes of consumer goods from China. Now he's cutting to a video movie where people are standing outside feeling the glass, trying to get in. And we're back inside Walmart. Absolute chaos. Are you in that? I hope not. The difference is the zombies are less aggressive. I think when we compare these back and forth, I think the zombies look definitely less dangerous than the Walmart shoppers. Certainly much quieter. They don't chatter as much. There are the people crashing the lines, running across as they're opening the store doors. Totally out of control. A wall-to-wall sea of people. And then we're back at the zombie movie. You can always tell when we go back to the zombie movie if you're not watching this because it gets real quiet. The people screaming are the ones in Walmart.
Look at how this guy's punching.
Yeah, this is a guy punching someone in the stomach for a little box of, I guess it's a TV, I don't know what it is. And in that particular case, the guy filming it was ejected by security, but they didn't do anything to the guy who was punching people. And here are the cops wrestling somebody to the ground at another Walmart. Absolute insanity. He says if Americans behave like this over electronic slave goods, and I guess what he's going to have, what do you think he's going to put up next? What's going to happen when everything collapses? Imagine how they will react when food runs out. Yeah, I think they're kind of going to go from knockout game to cannibalism in about 24 hours, don't you? It's very frightening. We're going to be talking to Alex about that at the bottom of the hour. We're going to be taking your calls in the next hour with Anthony Gucciardi. And we've also got Mark Dice to talk to us about the video that he did. It's a funny parody video where he's bullhorning people saying, what are you doing out here? Don't you realize that you're getting ripped off? Don't you realize that you're buying stuff from China, that you're going in debt for this? But we're not doing this necessarily just to make fun of people. We want you to understand, to be an intelligent consumer. We're trying to help people. That's what we do here. We're trying to show you trends, not to make fun of people, not to pick fights with people. We're trying to help you to understand what's going on. It's just like people complaining that we're maybe too negative because we're showing the bad things that the government is doing, but you need to see the gathering storm crowds. You know, I think that it makes you more grateful, more thankful for what you've got now if you really understand the potential dangers and what's gathering in the future. Certainly does in our family. We see what's happening. We're trying to make some preparations. Hopefully you're making some preparations as well, but you need to understand the trends and you need to understand how crowds react. When you look at things like Bitcoin, for example, this is something that the astronomical rise of Bitcoin in just the last week to 10 days, it's got a very small market cap. We've seen cases where gold has shot up and then been pumped and dumped. And there's been a lot of belief that that's being done by large investors, perhaps central banks. And we know that George Soros has made a lot of money doing that to currencies, to the Bank of England. So he pumped and dumped the Bank of England and made billions of dollars. So an individual like George Soros could do that to Bitcoin because its market cap is so small. And that's a real danger. These other currencies, these other cryptocurrencies, even though they're great ideas and we hope that they succeed, you need to be very, very cautious about it, especially don't do something like Isaac Newton did, which is buying in as the thing is going up exponentially. That's how one of the smartest men that ever lived went bankrupt. So we don't want to see that happen. But I want to go back real quickly to news that was breaking earlier as a follow-up story. I mentioned in the news segment just the first 5 minutes about this drunk driving breathalyzer tests that were being conducted on people in Fort Worth. They were telling people that it was voluntary, but the minute you turn up, they're analyzing your breath. And their reason for doing it is because the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration wants to use it as a justification to lower the definition of drunk driving. We saw the same thing happen with the EPA. They did exactly the same thing in North Carolina. They hooked people up, volunteers, that they, in this case, paid. They weren't paying people in Fort Worth. They hooked up volunteers to diesel engines and had them breathing the exhaust because they wanted to get these people sick so that they could argue to increase the regulations on particulate matter. So the government does this type of thing all the time. But here's a case out of California where the California Supreme Court actually outlaws science in a driving under influence case. This guy was driving 125 miles an hour on the highway in San Diego. The cops pulls up behind him, flips on the light. He immediately pulls over. He passes all of the sobriety tests, but they want to run a breathalyzer test on him because he admitted that he'd had a drink. He blew a 0.86, which is right over the legal limit. And he wanted a blood test, but they wouldn't give it to him. So what they did was he took it to court, and he had an expert doctor say that the breath tests don't really accurately measure your alcohol content or whether you're intoxicated. And the court just threw it out. They said, we don't care. The legislator gave us a definition of drunk driving. We're going to go with that. We don't care what the reality is. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back with Alex Jones. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. Alex is going to be joining us in the next segment. Today we're talking about Black Friday, and you probably may even be out there in that. DrudgeReport.com has that totally covered. He's got mall mayhem, suspected shoplifter shot after dragging a cop through the Kohl's parking lot. We got brawls. We got Walmart giving people armbands to try to keep everything down. And we've got Santa with a megaphone who is telling Thanksgiving parasite shoppers to think about what they're doing. That's Mark Dice's video. We've got that on Infowars.com, and we're going to be talking to Mark Dice in the next hour. And we're going to be playing his video and looking at that with Alex Jones in the next segment. I went out yesterday on Thanksgiving, and we looked at what was happening. Best Buys had a Thanksgiving opening for the first time. They've never done that before. They've always opened just on Black Friday. And that's what happens. People are getting more and more aggressive, so they're pushing back. They're making their employees come in and work on Thanksgiving. And it's just kind of a sad thing to see this devolve from a time of reflection where you can get together with your family, where you can think about the future, you can reflect on the past, you can be grateful for what you've got, into a situation where people are just knocking each other down and the Walmart's trying to grab the latest special, whether or not it's even a good deal. And of course, we have articles that show that it's not a good deal on average. Sometimes it is a good deal. Sometimes they give you a really good deal to get you in the door. They're door busters. And then once you get in there, they know that you're going to shop around, you're going to look at other stuff in there, and you're going to buy on impulse. That's when they get you. The price trends that Wall Street Journal has looked at show that certainly in this quarter, their profit margins, not just their sales, their profit margins are much, much higher. And that's even true on Black Friday. You can find cheaper prices even in the Christmas season, not to mention getting stuff out of the Christmas season. This is what we found last night. I went out and looked at a couple of stores with Rob Jacobson. We talked to shoppers who had been waiting a long time. We even talked to the manager of the Best Buy who is having all their employees work for the first time on a Thanksgiving. This is what we found. We are in front of Best Buy on Black Thursday, which used to be called Thanksgiving. Retailers like Best Buy are trying to get a jump on the competition by opening on Thanksgiving Day. David Knight, thanks for coming out and talking to us.
Hi.
Just curious because Black Friday is no longer Black Friday, it's now Black Thursday. How do you feel about that?
I feel great about it. I actually think that it gives us more of an opportunity to be awake, be invigorated. We definitely appreciate everyone coming out on this special day. They can spend it with us, get in, get out, go home, eat your leftovers.
Is this the first year you've opened up on Thanksgiving, or is this something you've done previous years?
This is the very first year we're doing the 6 p.m. open.
Of course, much more is sold this time of year, but profit margins are 22% higher this quarter than in the rest of the year. In other words, you're paying more to buy just before Christmas, and the biggest day of this quarter is Black Friday. So named because the profits made these couple of days often are the deciding factor in a profitable quarter or even a profitable year. But people are still convinced they're getting a deal. Can I ask you how long you've been here?
I've been here since midnight. The 3D TV that I'm getting. Overall, it's going to be like $600 in savings tonight.
I've been here since 7 a.m.
8 in the morning.
8 in the morning. For a laptop?
I'm looking for a TV. 39-inch flat screen for $169.99.
That TV may be cheaper than it was last week, but if they could wait until after Christmas, would it be even cheaper? And even if it's a steal, will they buy other things on impulse while in the store that aren't such good deals? So you think you're going to be susceptible to just kind of impulse buying once you get in there if you're not really sure it's here? Or?
I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. It's always just grabbing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will, for sure. Okay. Games.
But the shoppers are convinced they're getting a deal, and the retailers are really pumped. You feel good about the economy? Your job?
It's maybe looking a little bit better, but
well, yeah. It's not too bad. Another impulse buy that you can't afford, just like Obamacare. But unlike Obamacare, you can return it if it doesn't work. For Infowars Nightly News, I'm David Knight. Well, you know, when we look at what's going on Black Friday, we look at people, as the Drudge Report has. You've got a guy shot walking home with a big screen television. You've got Salvation Army kettles that are stolen. We look at what's going on with the knockout games in large cities, and even in some cities that aren't so large. It's a very troubling picture of what can happen if society breaks down or if we have war. We have Chinese jets that are flying into disputed air defense zones. If you look at this map, take a quick look at this map here on there. We've got Taiwan as well as Japan as well as China all asserting hegemony over a certain area. What it looks like is a Venn diagram. You've got all these different countries saying, we own this, the same area, these same little islands. When you look at them aerially, there's nothing at all on these islands. That's a real powder keg that could possibly happen there. And of course, these are the people that sell us everything that we have. So maybe they'll loan us the money to build our defense.
We're on the march. The Empire's on the run.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex, but Alex is joining us in the studio right now. And if you're watching this intro, you're seeing excerpts from Paul Joseph Watson's video comparing shoppers at Walmart, the violence that's going on there with the zombies. And actually, I think the zombies don't look nearly as dangerous as the Walmart shoppers, do they, Alex?
You're right, David. And again, I appreciate you doing the show Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving with their family. And of course, I always plan to come in on these days with special reports and add to the broadcast. But I personally enjoy listening to you, David. And I know a lot of other people do out there across the country. And that's been my goal, is to take the reporters that we put on the nightly news and develop them so that they can co-host the show and in the future start other radio shows and basically end up pretty much 24 hours a day down the road having live transmissions here at the Infowars.com Center. And we're finally getting close to the point of being able to start launching more of the shows. A lot of exciting things coming in the new year. We're really cracking the whip in a good way. I'm cracking the whip on myself to really up my game, go to the next level, and really try to counter the zombification of the public, not just here in the U.S., but worldwide, because we have a real shot right now at awakening humanity and taking action. Now, I wanted to explain to listeners why we are critical of Black Friday, Black Thursday. Soon it'll be Black Wednesday, then it'll be Black Week or whatever. You know, get in the black for businesses. The reason we're critical is multi-pronged. I am all for a merchant class. I am all for commerce. I am all for free market. I am all for sales and shopping and all of that, because we have a large population, and in a marketplace, that's what brings diversity and competition. But we don't really have a free market system to a great extent now, and it's the big box stores with the Chinese slave goods that have created in the last decade this phenomenon of Black Friday that is a fraud. And then the activity you see by the welfare class, it doesn't matter if they're black, white, or Hispanic, or Asian, they all look and act just the same, just different skin color, punching each other, attacking for things they think are good deals, when even the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Associated Press, and Paul Watson has an article on that at Infowars.com right now, on record admit it's probably about the 10th worst time of the year to shop. The best time is obviously right after Christmas or in the new year. And most of these people, because they've done the demographic breakdowns, are on welfare or they're deeply in debt with credit cards. They've got student loans. We have the greatest debt any country's ever seen, public, private, corporate. Churches are in debt, you name it. So you shouldn't see this type of activity just ravenously, these self-propelled, obese people eating GMO all day. Their kids probably shot up with every vaccine there are, watching 10, 12 hours of TV and video games a day, literally don't know where their state capital is, point their finger at us who are politically involved and say we're bad. They don't know about Foxconn and Apple and the suicide nets. And none of us are perfect. As we are a consumerist society. And there's nothing wrong with consuming unless it's the top of the pyramid for you. On your hierarchy of needs, is it the golden calf? The golden calf should be God, should be being honorable, should be your family, should be self-sufficient. And at the bottom of it, of your pyramid, should be daily sustenance, your needs. That's the first thing you need. And then you move up into family and culture and wanting to help others. That should be right up at the top of your pyramid in a healthy society. In a collapsing, decadent society, you see people, what I call the lottery mentality, or what I call the Obamacare mentality. It doesn't matter, the lottery is the worst investment you can make, bar none, except for maybe cigarettes or alcohol, things that hurt you. It doesn't matter if Obamacare, you could read the legislation, written as a fantastical private corporate tax stream to double, triple, quadruple prices, shut down their competition, force you to buy it, written by offshore mega banks. Doesn't matter if we came up and told people it's a screw job. They said, look, man, I want my free deal. I don't care if it's going to take money from the middle class. I don't care if it shuts the economy down. I want my free deal. Now they're finding out it's not a free deal. But instead of admitting they were conned, they're saying they want even more. Okay, Obama, become a dictator. Dictatorially fix it. And we predicted this would happen because we know how it works. You stick your hand in the wood chipper, and the answer is don't pull it out, stick it in deeper. There's a loudspeaker saying climb into the wood chipper, stick your head in it. If you like your arm being torn off and shredded, stick your whole body in, throw your kids in. That's what I liken it to, because in this kind of welfare class idea, they believe if the mainstream media is telling them, who are all financed by these big box stores and others, get in there, Black Friday's the best time to have a sale, they actually believe that they're going, and you went out and talked to him. Mark Dice has gone out and talked to him. Mark Dice is coming up bottom of the next hour. His story is on drudgereport.com, top story on the left-hand side. People should go watch that video, because when you look at it, you can talk to these people. He did last year. He did the year before. You talked to them. They don't believe that it's one of the worst times to shop, that they raised the price 3 weeks ago and then on this day lower it back to what it was previous to 3 weeks ago. They don't tell you after Christmas, after New Year's is the best time. They don't tell you sometimes the middle of the summer is the best time. They don't actually go do market research if they wanted to save money. They go in on average, and that's profit margins up 20% on the products they're selling. I haven't seen the numbers on total profit margin. That varies. So this is a screw job.
Right.
This is hype. This is fraud. And you go tell them, hey, lottery tickets are not a good investment. Hey, going to Vegas is not a good investment. If you're rich and want to go to Vegas, knock yourself out. But if you're poor, don't mortgage the house. Don't have the kids not have food to eat because you think you're going to go to Vegas or Atlantic City so some mob bosses can, fleece you. It's rigged. And that's the point, is that the Pope's coming out saying free market capitalism is bad. No, it's not. This is monopoly capitalism run by globalists that set the rules. It isn't free trade. It's slave trade. It isn't capitalism. It's insider crony capitalism, monopoly capitalism. And so the people perish for lack of knowledge. And this is a manifestation. I have some points I want to run through, but you've got some points. You were telling me off air. It's like Bitcoin. People said, Alex, you knew about Bitcoin when it started 4 years ago. You could have made $100 million. And I said, yes, I could have hyped it. I could have pushed it. I could have gotten out of it. I told people get out of it months ago on air. Now it's plunged. They will now be mad at me for saying it's a scam. It's the same thing. I could have had a Black Friday sale for our nascent iodine and our American Patriot blend super high quality Mexican coffee. But see, I have sales all the time. I have lower prices all the time. That's real capitalism, real competition where quality is why you're successful, not because you've got mind control over the population. So it's good to innovate and sell good products, but we're not going to have a Black Friday sale and then piggyback on. In fact, I even almost have told my crew, let's not have it be $29.95. Let's have it just be $30. Because people literally buy more if you say $29.95.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and I go along with some of it because it funds our operation and gets the word out. I got rid of almost all advertising. I have one contractually. I have some of those block ads you see I can't get out of for a couple of months. But then I'm probably not going to have any of it until I slowly vet each sponsor. I have to deal with network ads I don't agree with. I've told them, and they're great guys. I said, listen, if I say I don't want an ad on my show, it gets taken off or I leave. Because it's a real struggle to try to be at the highest level of integrity. So I'm not here on some high horse with people. We all make compromises. But are we moving towards better quality, being more honorable, or are we moving towards lower quality, being less honorable? I am working harder, being healthier, not drinking any, not using any tobacco products, not eating processed sugar. I am literally, I'm going to pray for me, folks, because I'm committed in my responsibility. I was telling this morning on the phone, and I've challenged the entire office to do the same, that, of course, you don't drink, smoke, or anything and eat healthy, so there's not much to challenge. You're trying to give up, soda pop or whatever. But the point is you're one Coke a day, which I don't blame you. Coca-Cola tastes great. I love it myself. All I know is we're in a historical crossroads, so we've all got to commit and talk about the spirit of this nation, and it all starts inside us. It's an inside job, just like it always is, as the song says. But make your point, and I've got a laundry list.
I think it's really, you're talking about the spirit of the society. When you look at things like the knockout game, when you look at people fighting over trivial things at Walmart, it's very frightening to realize that we have a very fragile infrastructure here. We've got China pushing in different territories.
That's the big issue.
War. So there's so many things that could happen. And if things get difficult, if we have a breakdown in the infrastructure, because now you're talking about big box retailers, we have big box food suppliers. So that they
just-in-time delivery.
Just in time. If that breaks down, if they can't get the trucks there, they don't have a lot of backup for the city. So what's going to happen to these people who are just knocking people out for the fun of it, who are getting into fights because they want some kind of consumer item? What's going to happen when they have a real need?
That's what our M4 carbines are for.
That's right.
And folks ask why we're so into preparedness. People ask why I've moved to the country. People have asked because if you mathematically, and all the major economists are on record, whether it's Peter Schiff or Mark Faber or Jim Rogers, it doesn't matter. But even the British Defense Ministry report 2007, even the Pentagon report 2 years ago, admits this is unsustainable. It will collapse. The question is, how bad will it collapse? And because they've engineered it to collapse, the globalists plan to be the last group standing when it all happens. And that's why we're so freaked out. That's why we're so concerned.
And that's a lot of what's behind Bitcoin, too, because when you look at Bitcoin, a lot of what's driving that is people's concern about the dollar and the poor management, the manipulation by the Federal Reserve. So there's a lot of people who have a real concern about that. They also want to have something that is private, that's out of the control of the federal government, that they can move out. So there's a real reason to have a cryptocurrency, just like with the South Sea bubble. There was a real reason for people to invest in a company that had a monopoly for all trade.
Well, exactly, but just like
into this bubble thing because of a crowd, everybody starts to buy into it because that's what everybody else is doing. So
well, notice it's the first one put out, very shadowy. I believe in crypto, totally independent currencies. It is the wave of the future. It is the answer to the system. The problem is, if you look at past bubble currencies, past private currencies, they always go through this boom-bust cycle. And so I didn't want to be there holding the bag, handing out basically the Kool-Aid to my listeners as if this was a panacea. I wanted to not have irrational exuberance and point out where I believed it was going and where it is undoubtedly going. And then they're going to use this destruction of Bitcoin down the road, I believe, to then discredit people that promoted it, discredit the idea of an independent outside cryptocurrency, and then bring in a globalist SDR model. And I believe at a gut level, fundamentally, day one, 4 years ago when it showed up, that this is a globalist manufactured time bomb, Trojan horse. But the way the mainstream media promoted it up front, the way they weren't negative about it up front, and then now they've just phased in the negativeness. If they didn't create it, they're planning to use it.
I find it very interesting that at the same time it took off, they also had all of these Washington hearings where they had about 8 or 10 different agencies in the federal government. You had the IRS, you had the SEC, you had FinCEN, looking at foreign transfers, you had the FBI, you had Homeland Security, and they're all coming in and they're saying, well, it's right after they took down a major drug site, but they're saying, we don't really want to push this too hard because we want the free market to work. They start sounding like they're libertarian free market advocates, and it's like, there's something wrong with this.
What they were doing was wanting people
up at the same time as being pumped up.
And then now they're using it to pass laws to basically ban any type of this currency. Now, let's stop there, because I want to give people the real reason I came in to break all this up, and I'll be here till 5 after, then Anthony Gucciardi's coming in. Let's go over the big issue that you just brought up. If you go watch Paul Watson's video on Infowars.com about the zombie plague sweeping America, these are people that literally believe that a handout of free government, a handout of free health care, or a magic golden lottery ticket is going to set their course. Not starting a business, not being honorable, not inventing something new, not working hard, which builds a good civilization, but running scams, getting on the backs of bubbles. This is a get-rich type scenario. The only time you should see lines of people fighting is in the Old West when the feds were taking public property and giving it away for 5 cents an acre or 3 cents an acre, or the Mexican land run or the Spanish land run when people ran down here from the U.S. because the Mexican government was giving it away for 3 cents an acre. Like my ancestors paid 3 cents an acre in East Texas for tens of thousands of acres.
That's better than Bitcoin.
Because then it's not some Chinese slave goods that break in 2 days or before you get them out of the box that were made at a factory with forced abortions and suicide nets. Then you could actually cut the trees. You could put cattle on it. You could raise crops. You could have kids. You could live and get away from being a sharecropper in Alabama. Because you had basically white slaves is what they were. They just weren't called slaves because that was illegal.
But they want to turn us all into sharecroppers again.
That's the plan. Yeah. That's the plan, is the globalists are offshore and they've created this mindset. So I want to explain to people what's happening here. When you see these riots and people punching each other in the stomach over bags of dog food or Xboxes, and they're not even really getting the best deal. They're getting a terrible deal. They could have got a better deal online. Or it's a loss leader where they sell 10 at one price, then change the sign. It's scam on top of scam. When you can't reach them, realize that we've got 50 million people on food stamps, 101 million on food assistance. That number's only growing. The baby boomers starting to retire this year. 2013, they started this year. It accelerates in the next 5 years. You'll have more people retired than in the working class. Illegals coming in who are getting all the free welfare and stuff because the government set it up that way. It is a recipe for destruction. And so what's going to happen is when things start to collapse, they'll roll out the riot police, the military, to quell things, and we'll be like, yeah, we needed that when the globalists created the atmosphere where that would be needed to begin with. Then they will have the giant mass after the waves of riots that are coming in the next decade. The waves of collapse, just like we've already seen in Europe a few years ahead of us, about 4 years ahead of us. They will use that. The Homeland Security's geared up for that, the social engineering, to bring in the high-tech system of control. They will then have the illegals and the giant mass of working poor who will now be supplemented with welfare, even at their working job. That'll be the new model. You work for the government or a select corporation, then you also get a stipend digitally on your national ID card that's tied to welfare. This is all part of the official plan. DHS will approve you getting a job under TSA. Yeah. This is all official. So they're going to have the mass of these people and the bureaucratic class vote to raise taxes just like France, 70, 80, 90% on the middle class, ultra-rich, offshore, above the law, to then leverage out the middle class, leverage us out, and basically destroy us, transferring our wealth to the poor, which won't even fund them for more than a few years. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to get rid of the political middle class that's always the strategic enemy of the offshore ultra elite who are above the law and have basically diplomatic immunity throughout history. That's why Homeland Security will be targeted at the Tea Party, libertarian, working middle class because we're the only challenge. Once we're extincted, they're going to cut all the welfare off, put the poor people in forced labor camps. That's the official plan. That's the globalist takeover program. We'll be right back with key intel on Black Friday and what it means to our civilization with David Knight. I'm Alex Jones.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight hosting today, this Friday after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. And we've got Alex Jones here in the studio analyzing what this really tells us about what's going on in society and the impending breakdown of society and how it's being manipulated by the globalists. Tell us. You had a couple more points you wanted to make.
Absolutely. And we're going till 5 after. Then Gucciardi's coming in. Then Mark Dice is coming on. And then Paul Watson with a lot of breaking news. Again, this is all part of the dumbing down process. And you have to understand, these masses of dumbed down people where they pay poor folks to have kids and then basically lobby with conditioning for upper class folks to not have children, this is all part of a phase just to bring down society on record. Department of Education, Charlotte Iserby was there in the 80s. She published the secret documents in her book, Deliberate Dumbing Down, that we sell, an abridged version. The big thick one sold out. And it is a program. That's why we know what the program is. And so they will vote to take our private property. They will vote to take our guns. They will vote to take our children. They're announcing the new culture and saying the problem is not enough socialism, not enough centralization. But again, it's fascism sitting above socialism. Now, let's expand on this. You see these dangerous hordes, countless videos of people beating up men, women, and children for their Xboxes, for their toys. The idea that this is where they can be somebody. This is their football field. This is their competition. They're not in the woods fighting, to go pick more bananas than the other primitive human running through the jungle. They are battling in the fields of Walmart. The streets are fields that never die, to quote Jim Morrison. And the police are there to arrest whoever videotapes it, not arresting the people they're foraging. And they've been doing tests, letting EBTs be unlimited in Walmart to see what happens, or turning them off to see what happens. They can only do this because people aren't individuals. They're scientifically controlled now. And just like you saw police in New Orleans and other areas stealing during Katrina, you're going to see the breakdown of society. And I think the establishment has overdone it. I think things are going to collapse so bad in this country that we have a chance, as Ron Paul has said, to use the collapse of crony capitalism and socialism and mobsterism, insiderism, gangsterism, cronyism, monopolyism, to restore the republic. But anybody that says those of us that work hard and don't produce aren't giving enough and that we're bad, France has 100% tax now on the middle class to extinct them. The ultra-rich socialists that run the country are tax exempt on record. This is mainstream news. The police on record end up not paying tax, most of it. Government can do whatever they want and be above the law. We're not. And that leads me to the last article up on Infowars.com. I'm going to be covering this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m., the lawlessness of government. I'm getting a bunch of examples on the Sunday show. This is out of Ammo Land. It links to mainstream news and goes through a whole raft of examples. The headline is, legalize theft of guns, where if the cops come to your house for a fire, or if the neighbor sees you cleaning a gun in your garage, this is what I see most often in the news, they come and take all your guns and say your neighbor was scared, and then don't give them back saying it's our policy, you've got to ask the judge, and then it takes 2 years with lawyers to get it back, and instead of a grand jury indicting the police for unlawful confiscation of property, they act like it's okay. And this is part of a larger lawlessness of the NSA, lawlessness of Obama, lawlessness putting our military under NATO, lawlessness putting fluoride in the water, which is forced medication with a toxic chemical. There's hundreds of examples. People can tweet and give me your example at Real Alex Jones, because I'm going to be compiling these this weekend. There's hundreds of government lawless. This is called tyranny. And all over the country, they're confiscating people's guns. They're taking people's kids for not inoculating them when there's no law. It's the family courts. That's what tyranny is a mass movement of lawlessness, hoping to overwhelm us at so many fundamental levels with imperious, arrogant government and corporations that control it, that we collapse and give in. So this is how criminal government, criminal corporations, and criminal individuals, they see themselves advanced through the welfare system, through Obamacare, through Black Friday, through these artificial constructs.
Thank you for listening to GCN.
Back to the Alex Jones Show on this day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday as it's also known. Alex Jones is in the studio with us, and he's been breaking down what this really means, and he's got a couple more points. Go for it, Alex.
That's right. Coming up in the next segment, David, you're going to recap your view on this and where it's all going. The faddism, the hype culture, the mind control culture. And that's my biggest point here, is that this is a culture who's told by the system, Obamacare is your free ticket, is your heaven. Vaccines are going to make you never die, never get cancer. Vaccines are a panacea. GMO is a panacea. And then you actually study everything the globalists do. It's all a fraud to enslave, because the globalists are taking over the planet. They're trying to conquer life on Earth as we know it. But bottom line, this is mass mind control. This is cultural manipulation. And Black Friday gets worse and gets longer each and every year. And let's be clear, it's a substrata of society who tend to vote Democratic and who tend to really think in their life someone in the power structure is going to give them something. Well, only for
looking after you.
Exactly, yeah. but only for a season. All of that will leave, just like Greece, just like Spain, just like all these other countries, just like Nigeria, just like Chile. Once they're done and once they wipe out the middle class, folks, it never comes back. This is a planned program. And I've made a lot of points here. It's just that it's the lawlessness of the government itself and corporations that is the real telltale sign. And imagine our forebears, if they could see Americans just randomly in a frenzy, believing they would find salvation in a Walmart, buying slave goods from a country designed to dehumanize their own population with thousands of riots a month, forced abortions, suicide nets, Prozac being forced on the workers, 16, 17 hours a day. They're living in the streets, just hell on earth.
See how this plays out in Greece. We just had an article earlier this week where he had covered an older man who is living on 300 euros a month. And a lot of these people are injecting themselves with HIV so that they can get 700 euros a month, and a little bit more health care.
Killing yourself to live.
Exactly. They don't even have enough money to buy food. And that's what we're really concerned about when we see these kind of riots.
Thousands are dumping their children. And that's the key. When you come back, make that point. I should have made that up front. That's the big issue. Imagine this domesticated population who will beat each other up and trample each other over an Xbox that spies on everything you're doing in your house. Their fantasy world where they're a top general. They're total failures in their own life, but they're a top general in their video game world. So many people that have worked here who've been okay folks were always exhausted and couldn't work. We had to let them go because they were playing video games all night and exhausted. In their fantasy world, they were a movie star. Second life, and it's so sad. They're already plugged into the Matrix. They're already inserting themselves, David.
And Microsoft Xbox One was set up to make sure that you stay in that Matrix. It's looking at your facial expressions, your body language, your heartbeat to make sure that they keep you excited. If not, they'll do something a little bit different. When they know they've got you hooked, they just keep throwing it at you.
It is a system to study you, to figure out how to manipulate you. In closing, it's all going to be covered today, but please keep hammering that point. Guys, print up the Flash Mob's brain chips. Type in Flash Mob's brain chips. You'll get the London Guardian on the British Ministry of Defense report 2007, where they break down that they're studying us, they're enslaving us. It's really happening. And I didn't plug anything last hour. Speaking of consumer society, the globalists want it where they take your tax money, give it to select corporations, or they give money to NPR or whatever. We're funded by you coming and getting the high-quality products at InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com, the Nascent Iodine, our new Wake Up America coffee, roasted in Colorado, totally organic, Oregon Tilt, highest quality, very popular. Folks are buying a lot of this. We appreciate your support. I think it's the best coffee I've ever tasted. That's why I went and branded it myself. It took me a while to be able to secure getting it at a low price. And the best Nascent Iodine out there for the thyroid and other health, InfoWarsLife.com. And your purchases support our broadcast. And the products are always on sale at InfoWarsLife.com.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Friday after Thanksgiving, Black Friday as it's known. And we've been looking at the madness of crowds and what that might portend for the future, especially as shaky as things are financially, as well as the drawn-out supply lines that we have in this country. Anything could happen. We need to be prepared for what's going to happen. But when you look at what the crowds are doing on Black Friday, Drudge Report has this broken down. We've got mall mayhem. We've got a man stabbed over a parking spot. We've got shoppers kicked out of Walmart for filming a fight. We've got the Salvation Army kettles stolen. A man shot walking home with a big screen TV. And one of the stories is linked from Infowars.com. Santa with megaphone shames Thanksgiving parasite shoppers. That's a Mark Dice piece. And we're going to have Mark Dice at the bottom of the hour. We're going to look at his video, and he's going to talk to us about what he saw on Black Friday and leading up to it, actually, on Gray Thursday, they're calling it now. It used to be Thanksgiving. It used to be a time of Thanksgiving, Anthony. What do you think about the trend?
Well, that's exactly right. And what concerns me is this is what we have to look forward to if we can't completely transform society. I mean, there's no question. Going back to Hurricane Sandy, if you remember that, I was up in the Northeast in Philadelphia when that happened, and I made a video. I guess that was, years ago. I made a video in CVS. I went in there to get something real quick. All the water was gone, the toilet paper was gone, and there were people shoving each other. And this was before it even hit. It didn't even hit Philadelphia that hard. It was like nothing. Shoving each other to get toilet paper in bulk, as if they were going to be there for 6 months, without any toilet paper. But that's what this comes down to. They're killing each other over TVs that they're paying more for. They're killing each other to pay more for consumer items.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's a big fraud. Down. Yeah, yes. It's just consumer items. So they're going to go from Walmart riots to cannibalism in a very short time if we really have some kind of a major infrastructure breakdown.
Well, the experts say about 2 weeks is how long we have before people literally are in the street killing each other and eating each other. Because the food will go bad in the fridge, the food will go bad in the freezer. Ultimately it comes down to, the one person that is prepared is the target.
Let me give out this phone number because we want to take your calls on this and get your feedback from what you've seen out there on Black Friday. It's 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231 to talk to Anthony and I. And we're going to have Mark Dice in at the bottom of the hour. Let's take a quick look at this video that he's got linked off of Drudge Report onto Infowars.com. He's dressed up as a Santa Claus, and he's driving by bullhorning shoppers who are out there just consuming away. Here's a little clip from that.
Black Friday Thanksgiving shopping is destroying the very fabric of the family, ruining the Thanksgiving tradition, and it's about time somebody do something about it. Thank you for not spending time with Grandma and Grandpa and leaving them and destroying the very fabric of society for buying more slave goods.
Okay, we're going to come back. We're going to have the rest of that video later in the show, and we're going to be talking to the guy who made that video, Mark Dice, and he's going to tell us what he saw and what he experienced there on Black Friday. What do you think about that video? Have you seen that video, Anthony?
I have seen that video. I'm interested to talk to Mark. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, here we are. Just a week ago, myself and Alex were in Dallas, and it was 28 degrees, if I recall, shivering for 8 hours.
In the rain.
Declaring the First Amendment to be right, declaring the Constitution to exist, being attacked by goon squads from the sheriff's office. And as you may tell in my voice, I'm actually battling some type of sickness right now. But I'm here because guess what? There's no time to lose. Yesterday, even I was working. You were working. You were there filming the Black Friday Insanity or the Gray Thursday or whatever it is. This is a time of victory at the same time to reflect on Thanksgiving as it was meant to be, to reflect on the reality of how far we have come. The mainstream media is dead. That's why the new magazine, which actually I was looking at the cover and talking about that a couple weeks ago, it's so clear to me now that dinosaur media is dead. And the new alternative media, the real media, which isn't alternative anymore, it is the media, period, is the comet that killed the dinosaur media.
That's right.
Exploding and wiping them all out. And here they are staring up at the sky, freaking out because they don't know what to do. So they start hiding under a rock or a tree. And it's a comet. The comet is going to blow up the tree and blow up the rock. And they're sitting there under the rock freaking out and saying, stop them, go get those people. They're crazy. Stop the comet. And they're just completely obliterated. Yeah. We saw that in Dallas. And here we are again, 1 week later, just pushing it even harder. And guess what? The reason Mark Dice's videos on Drudge Report has so many views is because people know what's going on. They watch these videos in disgust, and they say, how can people act like that? How could they possibly be so primal over a television? You could see a grandmother having super strength to pick up a car, which happens all the time, for her granddaughter or whatever underneath it trapped. They have super strength. They have that primal ability to help people. but they're focusing that adrenaline and primal rush on something as stupid as a television. That's when we know we need a complete transmogrification of how people think ideologically at a societal level if we're going to get anywhere. And ultimately, though, I think we are achieving it. That's why they are freaking out about this when we're saying, look at these crazy zombies. And there's so many people saying, wow, yeah, they are zombies. So I think we are having a major victory.
There's also an element of this madness of crowds. You know, people see everybody lined up and they say, hey, there must be a great deal in there, you know, so that they go in there. And that's part of the thing. They do give people some real good deals. They may not have very many of those really good deals, and you may get in there, even if you're going in there to get that one thing that you think that you're getting a really good price on, they know that you're going to start impulse buying once you get in there.
Any smart business person would raise the prices dramatically to slash the MSRP, which is the retail listed price, suggested price. They would slash the MSRP by like 90% after raising it.
That's right.
Because of Christmas time, and then say, wow, you're getting $500 off on this TV when, you know, they actually sell it for $100 or whatever it is. Those are the same people that stand in the TSA lines.
Yes.
And love it and say, yeah, they're protecting us. This is the exact same people.
The headlines from the Business Week article is, hey, shoppers, Black Friday savings are a hoax. And this is a long-term trend that they've looked at. They analyzed the price data. They looked at it online. They looked at it in regional chains, and they know exactly what they're talking about. They are a hoax, but TSA is a hoax as well. And they can pull that off by scaring people. You know, that's part of the crowd mentality. And the TSA even admitted in their own internal documents that there was no threat against airports and airplanes. Back in 2011, at the same time, they were threatening Texas with a no-fly zone if we put on some kind of anti-groping constraints on what the TSA was doing to men, women, and children.
No, the real threat are the homeless people that were given dinners. Check this out. This just came out in a story leak. We're going to have it up on Infowars. Church group kicked out of public park for handing out Thanksgiving dinners to homeless. Didn't print out very well.
Wow.
But ultimately, the story is, and it was in CBS 12, which props to the local news station trying to be the alternative media now. This church group went to a park. I watched the video before I came on air here. Handing out Thanksgiving meals to homeless people because they felt bad and, you know, they actually wanted to give them a meal. And the park ranger comes up and he says, I have orders from the top. You guys got to get off this public park. You can't give out food here to homeless people. And they say, well, you know, why can't we do that? We're just having a picnic and also offering it to the homeless who are coming here. And all the homeless are saying, yeah, thank God for this. You know, this feels like Thanksgiving again. I haven't even eaten anything.
The attack is on free association. Not organizing outside of a box store is illegal. Look at Dallas. If you let one ant stand up, they might all stand up. They're afraid of individuals coming together in free association. They're afraid of, look how we built Infowars because of free association. They are scared of individuals. They want a monopoly where only the government and mega corporations are allowed to organize people at sports stadiums with TSA diddling us.
That's exactly right. And homeless people are now evil, and the right to actually help people and help others. I mean, for example, I've actually given food all the time to homeless people while I'm driving. And the one time the guy was just like shaking. It was freezing. I said, here, take this. He said, no. Watch out, buddy. Watch out. And I said, what's wrong? He said, you see that cop over there? He's waiting for you to give me food so he can take you down.
Really?
That's a true story, yeah.
Really?
Here in Austin.
Was it just food or was it money?
No, it was food.
But so you could give him money and the cop would be okay with it, but if you give him food, he's going to take you down?
It was one of those Cliff Bars that I have Cliff Bars in my car for this reason, and I gave him a Cliff Bar. I was going to give him a Cliff Bar. I said, whoa. Unless you want to go to jail or be taken down by that cop, don't give me that food.
Wow. They have to establish that authority. And just like Alex was saying, last week in Dallas, they even said that. We can't let this guy get away. When Alex was handing out flyers in front of the Federal Reserve, telling people where they could listen, where we were meeting, what was going to be happening, they organized that we could take that guy down. And,
no, I was there. They said we're all criminals. We asked them, and they said, you're all criminals. You could all be arrested and given a $500 fine for having a sign near a road. Wow. And then you ask, well, where is there not a road in Dallas? And then they say, well, there's a free speech zone over at this park here in the middle of nowhere. And that's ultimately where we went, just to not completely get smashed in by police, just to show how ludicrous it was. We went to the free speech zone, and then ultimately we said, you know what, forget all of this, and went to the barricades. And that's when they started completely assaulting us for doing nothing.
Let's go to our calls. We got Marvin from Texas on the line. Marvin, what did you want to tell us about Black Friday or the madness of crowds?
I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about the Walmart fiasco. It seems like they're run by globalists themselves, but I bought one of the iPad minis where you pay $2.99 and you get the $100 gift card. Well, you don't even get the gift card at the time you're in the store. it's an e-card they email to you or mail to you at a time whenever they feel they want to send it to you. So I was trying to buy something.
And then they got your email address. Then they can send you stuff all the time.
Yeah, and you know what? When you log in, when you create a Walmart profile, they ask for your cell phone number, your name, your email address. So, there they go, getting into your business more. But
I want everything digital so they can track it and then game it. All these idiots go, I don't care if they spy on me. They use the spying systems to game everybody, folks. That's the point, is it's a predatory system. Go ahead. I will be co-hosting from time to time like an evil parrot that flies in.
Evil owl, so to speak, if you know what I'm talking about, the owl,
That's right.
But anyways, I was going to talk to you guys. I live in Dallas, and ironically, the free speech march that you guys had up there, during the JFK time, Wednesday, not once mentioned was the assault on the not the protesters.
Yet all the mainstream media covered us. It was the biggest story because they had nothing else going for them.
Well, the Dallas Morning News mentioned it just to try to ridicule us for even being out there about free speech, whether you agree with what we're talking about or not. We have free speech, and we need to stand up for that, or we're going to lose those rights. I'll be right back with Anthony Gucciardi, and we're going to have Mark Dice at the bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex, and I'm joined here in studio with Anthony Gucciardi from Story Leak. Now, Anthony, we've been talking about Black Friday, but there's another aspect of this, and that's just the random, senseless violence where they're not even attacking people because they want their little Walmart television, but just coming up and clocking people. This case that happened this week of this fairly well-known chef who was in New York City. They came up, they broke his jaw, they broke his nose, I believe it was. We're seeing this happening, though, all over the country. This isn't something that's just limited to the big cities. What does that tell you, along with what we see with Black Friday?
Can you imagine a societal collapse, which is coming, ushering in all of these zombies who are willing to kill people for big screen TVs, what they would do in a real collapse scenario, flooding into the streets, just anyone with any material goods would be taken down. And that's the whole thing. Thank God for the Second Amendment. And also, we have to look at it in this perspective, too. Hurricane Sandy. See, I was up in the Northeast when that was actually happening. So it flashes me back to that in New York. Major flooding. There was taxis going down the street in wells of water. And what we saw, though, was FEMA gods coming in with literal trucks of Doritos and Mountain Dew. Just corporate ownership coming in. The corporations were descending their leathery black wings over New York, and everyone was just crowding around these trucks and trying to push them over to get their Doritos out and drink their Mountain Dew. And that's exactly what would happen. The same people that are patrolling Walmart and the same people kicking out churchgoers who are trying to feed the homeless would come over with assault rifles and assault weapons in their black uniforms, and they would be gods. And the corporations would come in with FEMA and the government. They would offer Doritos and Mountain Dew, and we would have to just beg for it. And that's literally what would happen. That's what FEMA gave.
When you're talking about FEMA and the way they've handled these disasters or mishandled them, my son won a contest with the Fraser Institute, essentially contrasting a couple of disasters that happened in North Carolina. One that was pretty localized. It was a tornado that came through a small town and devastated, but just that one little area. Another one, we had a hurricane come through and hit a large area, so FEMA got involved. FEMA came in and set themselves up and created this massive bottleneck where nobody could get anything. You talk about how they were handing out Mountain Dew and
they were
junk food. Yeah,
trying to kill each other for a bag of chips 2 days after the hurricane.
FEMA was keeping people from getting anything. In contrast, the way it used to be done was the way it was done in the small town that was hit by the tornado that was just about 10, 15 minutes away from where we lived. In that particular scenario, the police came in, they kept people away from downed power lines, which is a good thing. Other than that, they didn't get involved in people's lives, and they allowed businesses to come in and just dump massive quantities of food and things that people really needed in church parking lots, and the churches handed the stuff out to people and distributed it.
Which is now illegal.
Completely voluntary, because you didn't have the federal government coming in and creating this top-down bottleneck that you see happen every time FEMA gets involved.
Which the police now arrest you if you do that, if you give out food to anyone that needs it. And not the government. And FEMA shut down all before Hurricane Sandy even came in. They just shut down, didn't help anyone. And then they came in with their corporate overlords with the trucks of Doritos. That's their response. Yeah. And that was just a hurricane, like 1 or 2 days after a hurricane happened, when most people were actually fine. The streets were flooded and, buildings were destroyed. But just imagine an actual societal collapse. You actually imagine it, and the only defense against us and complete destruction of our homes and our families is the Second Amendment.
That's right.
And no one can argue against the Second Amendment for that very reason and others.
We saw that happen in the L.A. riots. You saw, amazingly there, it was the Korean shop owners who were defending themselves against the rioting crowds using the Second Amendment. And they were the only ones who basically didn't get wiped out.
And the police aren't going to come and save you from the rioters. They're going to go after the church people who are giving out food to homeless people.
Well, in the L.A. riots, what the police did, you had...
loot your houses like in Hurricane Katrina.
You had Police Chief Gates, who had led the move towards SWAT teams and the militarization of the police there in L.A., and they were heavily armed compared to every other police department in the country. And yet what they did was they took that militarized police force and they used it to surround the police stations. They used it to surround City Hall because they're concerned about themselves, and that's what FEMA's concerned about. It's concerned about the continuity of government. It's all about the government. It's not about taking care of people. We've seen this every time there's a disaster.
Just think about this. In Dallas, they attacked us for doing nothing and having a First Amendment, just standing there behind barricades that they said were magically blocking us from entering a public event. Just think about that. They attacked us for nothing. What would they do in the event that their families needed food and were threatened as well?
Because the worse things get, the more power they get. It's easier to wreck society and then take it over than build a good society, because we have a society run by criminals now, and we, the good people, have to stand up and take this country back.
And that's exactly what they want. They want to own everything. They want to turn us back into a kind of a neo-feudalism. That's what the goal of the elite is. That's why they're taking everything. They want us all to be turned into renters who have to buy everything from them. We're going to be right back with Mark Dice, and we're going to play his video that's top linked on Drudge, and we're going to talk to him about what he saw on Black Friday. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here on this Friday after Thanksgiving, and I'm joined in the studio here with Anthony Gucciardi. And Anthony, we were just talking before the break about how in the disasters that you saw, Sandy up in Philadelphia, FEMA showed up and they started handing out Mountain Dew and junk food, and people were fighting over that. I'm trying to find ways that I can get healthier food, and Infowars Life is rolling out new products. You've got this nascent iodine survival shield, very pure form of iodine. You've been involved in that from the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about what your goals were, how you put this together.
No, that's exactly right. The government wants to give you Doritos and Mountain Dew with high fructose corn syrup that admittedly contains mercury, which admittedly contains genetically modified ingredients. And the whole thing with Infowars Life has always been rejecting thousands of products, finding the best, the kernel in all of it, the golden kernel. GMO-free has always been across the board, #1 priority, in sense of pure ingredients, absolutely free of any contaminants, any additives, and that survival shield, Infowars Life Survival Shield, nascent iodine, also tastes amazingly good.
Yeah,
and I'm actually really happy. Logistically, we finally have some more in stock today. So if you go ahead to InfowarsLife.com and you purchase some for yourself and your family, in the event of a disaster, this is what I have in my medicine cabinet. This is what I take on a daily basis as well to prepare myself. And we finally have some in stock. Thank God, because, I know so many people want it to prepare themselves just, in the event of a disaster, that we do have some. If you order it today, it should go out today if you order it soon enough. Otherwise, it will go out Monday. And then also,
you mentioned it tastes good. I mean, it really does. That's the thing about a lot of these supplements that you get. A lot of people take things in pills because the taste is so bad of the other forms, but it's a lot more bioavailable if you get it in liquid form. And that's one of the things about that iodine is it really tastes good. But
my whole thing is Dr. Group, the developer of the nascent iodine, his process is so astounding to me, even though I know it. When he tells me more about it each and every day, my mind is blown. The sound wave technology, the Russian physicist he brings in with the patents on this technology just to completely just make sure it tastes the best, it works the absolute best. All the testing he's done, I won't even get into how much money he spent on just testing the purity alone, just over and over again, making sure it's the best. And that's why I know I'm good with promoting it. Creating the 3rd largest natural health site in the world, I'm only okay with promoting and overseeing products that are good.
And we got another
name on this.
We got another product, Wake Up America Coffee. That's talking about tasting good. That's great. I mean, I just started drinking coffee because I'm trying to get off of my vice, which is soda pop. We just talked about how harmful soda pop is, the high fructose corn syrup, things like that. But this is the best coffee I've tasted.
I don't even drink coffee, and I said this before, but this coffee is actually really good. And to add that on, there's an immune support bonus as well on the black one. This is my favorite right here because you're actually getting immune support with various mushroom blends. And that's key to me because I know there is studies out there. Coffee is a key element in numerous aspects of health. But with the immune support, you're also adding that extra kick, and it doesn't taste bad. It tastes good. So that's the one I take and drink on the daily basis. But for me, you're also, if you support the First Amendment, if you support what we did in Dallas, that takes funds.
That's right.
That takes massive activism. There's we printed 30,000 of the signs. We went out, got, the hotel rooms to be there. He brought his whole crew out, to do this for 8 hours in 28-degree, weather. That takes fuel. It's like an
couple
engine.
of days.
You need oil and gasoline, and I'm all about fueling, what is Infowars. And fueling Alex's, major goals. And that's what's key to me. Not only are you preparing your health, which is great, but you're fueling all of this at a major level.
So at InfoWarsLife.com, that's where you can find this stuff. We're trying to bring you good quality products, great quality products, and as Anthony said, that's how we fund the operation. Now, we've got on the phone line, joining us now is Mark Dice. Mark's got a video that's top linked on Drudge. Santa with megaphone shames Thanksgiving parasite shoppers. Let's take a look at this video, and then we're going to bring Mark Dice on to talk about it.
This Black Friday Thanksgiving shopping is destroying the very fabric of the family, ruining the Thanksgiving tradition. And it's about time somebody do something about it. Thank you for not spending time with Grandma and Grandpa and leaving them and destroying the very fabric of society for buying more slave goods. Thank you for ruining the tradition of Thanksgiving. You are parasites on this country. I bet all of you, how much credit card debt do you all have?
There's people lined up to get in his Kohl's.
I'll bet you don't even have an ounce of silver, but you're going to go buy more garbage with credit cards to impress people that you don't even like with money you don't have. Way to go, debt slaves!
There's a Target. He's got people lined up for Black Thursday.
You're destroying the very Thanksgiving tradition. You're teaching your children such great family values. Let's not have the family together for dinner. Let's get everybody out to buy a bigger television and more iPads so that they don't talk to each other. Thank you, enemies of America. Thank you, parasites on this country. How much credit card debt do you all have? Oh, you're all a disgrace to Christmas. Shame on you all from the North Pole. Ha, ha, ha. You are all parasites and debt slaves. Mentally enslaved morons. You are enemies of America. You are enemies of the family and of tradition.
All right, let's bring Mark Dice
Shame on
on.
all of you for destroying.
You guys can see the rest of that video on Infowars.com. Mark, Santa is usually there to promote consumerism. You use them for something else, didn't you?
The Black Friday madness has just really gotten me angry because it is ruining Thanksgiving. The poor workers that have to work these bizarre hours have to take a sleeping pill at 1 in the afternoon to go to sleep and try to get up and work these bizarre hours. We have countless families that are sacrificing and leaving Thanksgiving dinner early, spending time with grandma, grandpa, aunts, and uncles, people that they hardly ever see, to go and stand in line for hours and hours and hours to maybe save a few dollars. And so the video that you showed started off a little sarcastic, a little in jest, and then it did get a little caustic, but somebody has to try to reach these people. They are destroying the very fabric of the family on Thanksgiving, a day when we're supposed to be thankful for what we have. They're sacrificing and leaving their families to go and get more iPhones, more iPads, bigger televisions, so that they can isolate themselves in their own little world, not talking and communicating with their own family members.
Yeah, something that's being driven by big box retailers, isn't it? I didn't, when we were out on Thanksgiving looking for crowds, we didn't see any at the mom and pop stores, the local retailers, even some of the big box stores like Hobby Lobby. They weren't open, they were closed. But you've got a lot of these other stores where if they can just make a few more bucks, they're going to try to beat out the other big box retailer, right?
It's horrific. I mean, some of these stores, Kohl's department store, JCPenney, and we have people that are working there in their 40s, 50s, perhaps in their 60s, that may be forced or coerced into working these bizarre graveyard shift hours on one of the holiest days of the family. You know, if it was Black Friday, which it was supposed to be contained to Black Friday, and then as we all know, it started encroaching. The stores started opening a little bit earlier, 8 a.m., 6 a.m., 4 a.m., causing many people to have to leave their Thanksgiving family dinners early to then go to bed so that they could then work Black Friday at these early hours, now having to sacrifice their very Thanksgiving dinner. And these zombies, these parasites, it's a symptomatic reflection of the destruction of the family values, of this almost completion of the Illuminati-controlled New World Order. When we have people leaving Thanksgiving dinner to go and buy more crap, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, I can't express how disappointed and angry I am.
Well,
I'm sure
it reminds me, even Jesus went in and whipped the money changers. You know, I mean, sometimes you have to be harsh to these people because they just don't get it. I mean, he literally whipped them.
Because if they weren't there, if nobody showed up, the big box retailers wouldn't do this. So ultimately, it's these people lining up at midnight to get in and get their television set that's causing people to have to work on Thanksgiving.
Well, I think the key question, though, Mark, is this foreshadowing what's to come? I mean, what happens in actual societal collapse? What does this mean to us? I mean, there's people out there willing to kill each other for $100 off on a TV when they're actually spending more money. What are they going to do when they have no food?
No, these are zombies. These are parasites. They're virtually animals. It's unbelievable. That's why I tried not to just to ridicule them, tried not to just to shame them. I tried to plant some seeds, asking them if they have a retirement plan, asking them about their credit card debt, trying to get them to think about this gold and silver and investments in the family. And what are these people teaching their children to go and leave Thanksgiving dinner? Forget talking to grandma and grandpa and the wisdom that they have gathered over their many years on this earth. Go and try to save a couple bucks on a big screen television so that you don't have to talk to your family members. And I encourage other people. Right. I encourage other people to do this. And I think if we can create such a shameful environment, if we can cause people to understand the damage that this is doing, then maybe we can shame and convince these big box retailers to reverse this trend and stay closed on Thanksgiving. What's next? Open on Christmas Day for after the holiday bargains? It has to stop now.
You know, I was kind of disturbed, too. I was asking people who was getting the Xbox One, and I found a family, very young child, and I said,
which watches you naked?
Yeah, exactly. And so I started talking to the mom, actually, over the child. I said, you're aware of what it's watching. You're aware of how it's trying to manipulate your child, looking at his heartbeat, looking at his body language, so it can keep him hooked into that. How do you feel about that? And she kind of sheepishly shrugged, and he goes, I want it, Mommy, you know. So it's like,
well, that's the key thing. People are willing to do anything for these worthless plastic goods.
Yes.
What are they willing to do when society collapses and they have no food? Mm-hmm. What are they willing to do? They're being driven to this primal adrenaline-rushed rage over a TV by design from these corporate whores. What are they going to do when their family needs a loaf of bread?
They'll kill anybody and anyone. They would probably kill their grandma just to take her last jar of peanut butter. I mean, if you saw the video, which is youtube.com/Mark Dice or Infowars.com, before I started megaphoning as I'm driving up, you could see almost everybody standing in line wasn't talking and hanging out and having a big festive environment. Every single person virtually was standing in line, staring at their phone. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't even know what else to say. I'm glad that, you know, I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm glad that Infowars is on this and that we are seeing a kind of a backlash. Thankfully, Drudge is posting the video of these zombie plagues and the violence. These people are not civil. It's not a big, fun, festive environment. It is becoming a very dangerous place to go and to bring children to, and it's just a disgusting symptom of the New World Order that's nearly completed.
Well, I think you're right in saying that the key here is shaming the people that will wait 24 hours to get $100 off a TV that's the MSRP of which has been raised $600, ultimately spending more money and fueling the machine. And it also kind of goes, you know, hand in hand with this whole idea that the system is helping you, the establishment is helping you as the mainstream media dies. As all these corporations are flushed out by online retailers that actually have good deals and actually, help to influence and educate people. My thing is, do you think we can overcome this and change society and transmogrify it to the point where people don't think this is cool anymore?
I hope so, and that's what I'm trying to do, and I know what you guys are trying to do, and that's why I appreciate you having me on and spreading the word about the Santa shaming parasite Thanksgiving shoppers, because it's almost too late. I mean, thousands of people lining up outside of virtually every one of these stores, the violence plaguing. And I'll bet you most of these people are probably buying stuff on credit card, paying 15, 18, 20% interest. So even if they save a few $100s on their Chinese-made slave goods, in the long run, they probably will never pay those items off, or even if they do, they will have more than paid the difference for what they saved to begin with. I don't know if some of these people maybe just didn't hear of like Amazon.com or Overstock.com or, maybe I think what I'm going to do this afternoon, I'm going to go to maybe the Salvation Army and get a couple of nice books for 50 cents a piece.
Books? You mean those like paper things? Those, I don't know. Well, we've seen people knocking each other around in stores on Black Friday before. But now this year, we've seen something a little bit different. We've seen a further degradation and devaluing of human life and respect for each other with this knockout game. And I'm not surprised at all, really, to see what they're doing for television sets or consumer goods from China when we see the last several weeks, we've seen this knockout game going on all over the country. Just no respect for human life. Which
is where they punch someone in the face and pretty much hope they die.
Yeah, just sneaking up behind somebody and hitting them. When you're in a city, if you go to a self-defense instructor, they're going to talk about threat awareness, right? Somebody else might just talk about street smarts. And essentially, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people some threat awareness about this fragile infrastructure we've got, this economy that's very fragile, and things that can happen and give them some insight into what they can do to take care of their family now and the dangers that are possibly coming up with the infrastructure breakdown.
And this has been a long time in the making. It's the breakdown of the family. It's the breakdown of the schools. It's the poisoning of the mainstream media. It's these Illuminati icons that these kids worship. And you can destroy a country in a generation, and that is what's happening. And that's why I think all of us are trying to work as hard as we can to try to stop this or to slow it or to minimize it. And thankfully, there are some good stories. We know the Pizza Hut manager refused to open and have his employees work on Thanksgiving. He was fired after word spread about that. And the Pizza Hut didn't want the negative publicity, so they rehired him. Some stores, like Hobby Lobby, other Christian-owned stores, refused to open on Thanksgiving. And I think that, shaming them is the right thing to do, because these people are victims and willing victims in many cases of the psychological manipulation, because human beings are very easily manipulated. We're essentially just biological machines, and the system knows how to push those buttons and manipulate people like marionettes. And so since we know some of those very same strategies, we can use them to reach people, to show them what's happening to them, so that they don't wake up, in a boat with no oars 5 feet from Niagara Falls.
Well, it's the same techniques they use on us. Psychologically, they insult people who don't go to Black Friday, and they act like it's a cool thing to do. Go save $500. It's smart. They have on all of the ads, the magazines, how much you save, $600 today. It's the same thing we're doing by, you going out and pointing out how insane they are. That's actually psychologically programming on a massive scale, when it's on drugs and everything like that, for people to realize it's not cool. I think it's a good idea.
Well, it's also the madness of crowds. It's like what we're seeing going on with Bitcoin. Everybody say, hey, this is big. Here's a line at the store. They must have good stuff. Everybody's buying Bitcoin. It's going straight up astronomically. So I need to get in on that.
But if we don't stop it now, then they will actually kill themselves when society collapses, which will happen anyway. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just saw an interview with Kanye West. I call Kanye Pest, one of the biggest rappers in the world, as you know, married to the Antichrist of entertainment, Kim Kardashian, are engaged to this just Baphomet-worshipping, blood-bathing bimbo. But he was saying how he didn't feel successful. He didn't think that black people were successful because there weren't as many black billionaires, and because only X amount of African Americans owned Maybach Benzes. You know what I think is a sign of a successful person is having a great family, having some good kids, being a quality man and sticking by your family. This mainstream media, Illuminati-controlled system has fed false idols to the youth and really to the adults as well. teaching them in a false way what to aspire to be, and perverting the very value systems where they believe that in order to be a happy, successful, peaceful person, they need to have a Mercedes as opposed to having a quality.
That's exactly right, Mark. Hang on, we got to take a commercial break. We're going to be right back with Mark Dice, and we're talking about Black Friday commercialism and what it tells us about the future. Hang on, we'll be right back.
Alex Jones here.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. I'm joined in the studio here with Anthony Gucciardi, and we have Mark Dice on the line. Now, Mark has a video where he's dressed as Santa Claus, and he's bullhorning the shoppers, trying to get them to understand that they're not getting good deals, that they're not doing anything that really makes any sense, and they're making people work on Thanksgiving. It's a video that's up on Infowars.com. It's linked from Drudge. There's also, Anthony, an article from Drudge about a North Carolina store manager donating $100 after a thief steals a Salvation Army kettle from the mall. That's the kind of thing that, Mark, you were just talking about before the break, how we need to lead. And we've got some people like Hobby Lobby, they were not open on Thanksgiving, and good for them. And good for this store manager who, even though he had to work on Thanksgiving Day, he donated $100 of his own money when somebody stole the charity kettle.
Yeah, it's just absolutely incredible. I don't even know what else to say. This is what the New World Order wants, a bunch of mindless slaves that only think about a few hours in advance. They can't even have the cognitive ability to think and plan ahead. That's why I've called them zombies, and I've been doing that for years, and this is sort of caught on. That's what they are. They're almost more dangerous than zombies. Like you said earlier in the show, David, zombies are more docile. They're not quite as aggressive as some of these. I don't even know what to call them anymore. Demons. These are just absolutely, demonic.
Well, Mark, let me ask you a question. Your YouTube channel, I forget how many millions of views does your YouTube channel have now?
Last I checked, probably about 40 million views.
That's what I thought.
It gets about 3 million views a month.
Well, the truth is viral, isn't it? I mean, Alex's channel has something 200 million. My channels combined probably have several million. It's just ultimately truth is viral. Don't you think we're winning though? At the same time, this insanity is going on. We're actually winning.
Oh, it's incredible, and I'm very blessed. One of the things that I'm very thankful for is the fact that we have such a huge outreach, and we have eyes and ears all over. We have such a great support base with the resistance, supporting family values, supporting the Constitution. And it's incredible. I mean, sometimes I don't really realize it. Most of the time, I don't realize how successful, widespread my channel is until, like you say, you really look at the numbers, and it's quite incredible. And I think, I'm just a vessel. I'm just doing what I think is right. I'm trying to do it, and that's what we're all trying to do. And it's great that so many people are on the same page with us. And I think the fact that, my YouTube channel is getting 40 million views, 3 million views a month consistently, it shows that we're not alone in this fight, that we're not a small minority. And I think you can see this year in the coverage, because many people have seen the Black Friday and the Thursday Thanksgiving encroaching getting worse every year. And so there is a growing backlash of people like us that are really taking a look at this and saying, this is just disgusting. That's
exactly
shameful.
What we have a great metaphor for that on the cover of the new Infowars magazine. It just came out. It's dinosaurs running, and they've got labels from mainstream media, and there's this meteor coming down that's labeled alternative media. That's exactly what we're talking about. The truth is going viral. You're a big part of that, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about your experiences on Black Friday. And hopefully we can wake people up. Hopefully we can make them understand that there's more to life than just consumerism, isn't it?
It is true. Family and friends, the most important thing, and we need to just reinforce that. And a word of caution to anybody who wants to mimic this and try this, you must be very careful. You're literally dealing with angry mobs. You could get seriously injured or killed if you do this without the appropriate safety measures. So just a word of caution out there. And, thanks, everybody. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. David, Anthony, Alex, everybody over there at the crew. So, appreciate you guys having me on, and keep up the great work over there.
Thanks, Mark. And you keep up the great work. We'll be looking forward to seeing what else you do. You've always got great psychological insights to people. And I've seen videos where he's done in the past where people have actually thrown stuff at him as he's driving by bullhorn. They don't like to be pointed out they don't like the fact pointed out that they're really kind of standing in line for what's essentially a hoax, as the Wall Street Journal puts it. Would you say so, Anthony?
Oh, that's exactly right. They hate exposure.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. I'm joined here in the studio with Anthony Gucciardi. We're going to have Paul Joseph Watson with us starting in the next segment. But we want to take some of your calls right now, see what your experiences are with Black Friday. We've been talking about the zombie consumerism, the concerns that we all have as we see them doing these knockout games, as we see people fighting in Walmart for these little trinkets from China. What does that tell us about human nature? What does that tell us what's going to happen when society begins to fray at the edges, or if we have some kind of sudden infrastructure collapse? Let's go to Randy in Oklahoma. Randy, what do you want to tell us about your Black Friday experience?
Hi, David. Well,
hi.
I'm basically boycotting, although I may go online and get something there at Infowars. I'd encourage people to do that, of course. There's an app I'm aware of, by the way, called Boycott. That might be something people could check out. Listening to Mark, the word idolatry came to mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a sign of the desperation of the power structure, of how desperate the economy is, and what they're trying to, wring the last bit of money out of the consumers that they can.
And wring the last bit of effort out of their employees. I think it was a really important point that Mark made about employees being forced to work, and this pizza manager who let his employees off was fired and then reinstated. He's the guy who really understands and appreciates his employees, I think. And that's a very important thing. Having owned some retail stores for a while, I understand how important it is to keep good employees, to keep good morale. It really does pay off in the long run. They're looking at a very short-term cycle, I think, when they put these kind of requirements on their employees. Thanks for calling, Randy. I've got Alex has called in, and he always gets to the top of the line. Alex.
That's right. I can't help it. Even when I take off, as I'm coming in, that's all I'm thinking about the New World Order. I take off even a day or two, and I feel so good. I'm not exhausted. There's no one on air, and I'm listening to all the great points you're making. It's fine. I had one more point I wanted to make, and that guy just basically made it. It's not that consumer things are bad, or buying stuff you need is bad, or liking a car that runs well is bad, or liking a nice gun. It's that if you'll do anything for it and beat people up at a store, plus it's not even a good deal, it shows it's the same crowd that's looking for a free ride. The point I heard you talking about Mark with Anthony there at the end of the last segment. I know Paul Watson's coming up with key information. In the final equation here, our YouTube channel has 340 million views. Our other channels have about 100 million views. We add up all the other channels. We have 600-plus million views on YouTube now, conservatively. 600 million views, and that's just one outlet. That shows we are the dominant media. We are becoming the dominant media, thanks to DrudgeReport.com and WorldNetDaily.com and all the other true libertarian patriot media, because we understand individualism is freedom. Collectivism in all its forms is slavery, unless it's volunteer collectivism through free association, but that's still an individual collective, so the opposite of a forced collective. So I just wanted to point out that people are hungry. Yes, the zombies are dangerous. Yes, they're zombie-like, but we've got to reach out to them and show them how it's really a scam. They believe the mainstream media that the best deals are in, when that's not even true. But even mainstream media is being forced to now report the truth. So they don't want us on the streets. They don't want churches handing out food. In Austin, they won't let you give homeless people food. They've passed type of regulations where only their controlled systems can hold up society when it collapses, because the collapse is their takeover system. The average cop doesn't know that. The average bureaucrat's not bad. We need to reach out to them. They care about their children. They care about the future. So that's what I called in about, was just to set the record straight. We reach 15 million people awake one way or the other. And even in the game to YouTube world, 600-plus million views, 340 million on one channel. It's unbelievable. And just continue on. I know Paul Watson's got a lot of incredible info coming up. And, I told Drew they have to come in today, but a lot of folks came in. I told you to have to work next day. You wanted to go out and shoot video, but that's because you wanted to expose Black Friday. It's a great job, David Knight, and the entire crew that's up there, and everybody else. Alex Jones signing off. I am now over and out. Parent will not improve.
Alex Jones here.
The Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex, and I'm joined here in the studio with Anthony Gucciardi. And we've been talking about Black Friday, what that tells us about society. We've got Paul Joseph Watson, who's joining us right now after we talk to Anthony a little bit more. But Anthony, I wanted to give you one last moment here to give us your take on what's going on.
I think the reality here is short and sweet. If the people that are so rabidly outside, just adrenaline pumping through their veins at a primal level to get a piece of plastic made in China, if those same people, the thousands, hundreds of thousands maybe across the country lining up outside at 5 a.m., those same people would take 1% of that drive and put it towards the fight for liberty,
yes,
towards the fight for independence, the Constitution, the fight for reality, we would win tomorrow, period. If those same people would join us and come together and realize those plastic material items, they're worthless. And like Alex said, it's not bad to drive a nice car or, want some material items, when you have the capacity to purchase them and help other people with your funds and everything as well. But if you're frothing over them outside at 2 a.m. waiting to save $50 when you're actually spending $200 more on a TV,
that's right.
That energy needs to be converted. It needs to be completely, transferred into a powerful decision that you're going to fight for liberty and for freedom, and we will win if we can get those people. And I think those people, sure, they are zombies, they are deluded, but at the same time, we can recapture their spirit and we can drive them towards understanding and join our side in the fight against corruption and tyranny and deception.
That's right. It's not money that's the root of all evil. That's often misquoted out of the Bible. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. And if we can get these people to understand and love their family and liberty, those issues, understand where they are, the dangers in front of them, I think you'll find them joining people standing in the cold rain, fighting for the First Amendment like you. And so the rest of the Infowars crew and Alex Jones were doing just a week ago in Dallas. It's amazing how much has happened in just a week. But a small, committed group of people is always a thing that changes society, because that small, committed group of people always pulls in a larger group of people. I think that's exactly what we're hoping to see here, and what we're starting to see with the mainstream media being replaced by a more authentic media, like the cover of the Infowars magazine with these dinosaur media looking up and seeing this meteor coming in. That's the real media, the real truth that's going viral with people.
That's exactly right. The new media is coming. The dinosaur media is trying to cloak itself and become the new media. They're failing. Bloomberg, I always use this example. Look to Bloomberg. They are the perfect prime beta example of how they are trying to be alternative news, talking about the big banks and how bad they are. Mm-hmm. Then we see actually CBS coming out with some good pieces. Actually, CBS came out with this piece that we covered on Story League about how homeless people aren't allowed to eat Thanksgiving in public parks from churchgoers who are trying to help them.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that from Fox in the past, but then Fox will go in and shut down or marginalize the more libertarian hosts like Judge Napolitano or others. They'll pull them in, they'll get the audience hooked, think, oh yeah, these guys are kind of on the same line, and then they'll move them away. Yeah, exactly
right. Mm-hmm. They need that audience, or they will actually have zero viewership. I mean, less than 20%, according to Gallup polls, actually trust them. Mm-hmm. But Fox actually has the highest trust ratings. That's because they do throw in some scraps. They throw in some real news and stuff. But so do most of those channels, besides completely worthless channels like MSNBC. I mean, a lot of the mainstream news now is fusing in this alternative spin on a lot of it because they know they have to survive.
Yes,
It's just like someone dying, of an infection. They need the antibiotics, and instead of taking the whole bottle as directed by the doctor, they're just taking some antibiotics here and there, taking away some of the infection. That is the complete establishment control of the mainstream media. But ultimately, they'll never get rid of it unless we force them to and become our own media.
You're absolutely right. Well, thank you, Anthony, for coming in on this Black Friday and giving up your spot in line at Walmart. I really appreciate the sacrifice.
Well, I was there all night, and I just decided I'd have to come in and fight for freedom instead.
At the last minute, you just gave it up and came in and talked to us. Thank you so much for coming in. We've got Paul Joseph Watson on the line from the UK. Paul, do you have anything like Black Friday in the UK? I know this looks bizarre to you. It looks bizarre to us.
Well, one of the things that I noted in previous years was the fact that this was an American tradition, that we weren't seeing similar rabid scenes of rampaging hordes in Europe. But actually, there are articles out today where indeed it has been imported into the UK.
Oh, no.
While it's not as aggressive and rabid and zombie-like as it is in America, The trend is crossing the Atlantic Ocean. So yes, it is being imported now into Britain, as most American cultural icons are.
Give it time. The kind of Black Friday madness will start metastasizing all over the UK, just like McDonald's and Burger King's, right?
Well, we had the Uber Black Friday a couple of years ago with the mass riots of everybody trashing shopping malls and stealing things. So, we're doing it on a professional level.
I thought the video you did was great. Looking at these alternating clips between zombie movies and shoppers and Walmart, I think I would take my chances with the zombies.
Well, they're slower moving, aren't they? They're not as aggressive as George A. Romero's Undead. But the funny thing about that video was, it's a 2-minute video. I spliced together about 20 different clips, almost half of which were, short clips from Dawn of the Dead, the dystopian classic.
Yeah.
But after I rendered the video and uploaded it to YouTube, there's actually a sequence between a clip of Black Friday shoppers being let into a store, rushing the gates and being let into a store. And then it cuts to another overhead clip of a similar scene of people rushing into a store as the barricades are lifted. I don't actually know. I forgot if that is actually from Dawn of the Dead or from Black Friday shoppers. I don't know where it comes from. Because
the line blurs between reality and the movies, right?
But I was genuinely baffled. I was thinking, is that Black Friday or is that Dawn of the Dead? Because I genuinely forgot. So, I mean, that's how scary it is. But as I mentioned at the end of the video, if this is how Americans behave over electronic goods, which they don't really need and they can't afford, how will they react when the food runs out? Because what you're seeing in these videos, psychologically speaking, is how people behave when they perceive scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
So, imagine it's not HD televisions they're fighting over, but food in a bread line. It's going to get pretty rough, which is a very good argument for storable food.
Yeah. In this case, it's just, as you mentioned, in this case, it's just perception. And what does this tell us when that perception turns into reality, when people are genuinely hungry and they really have to have something, whether it's food or whether it's health care? It's going to turn from this kind of scene into a kind of cannibalism that we've seen over and over again in the Soviet Union or in China, other places where a kind of socialism has descended and they've shut down the system either intentionally or just out of total incompetence. And we see people very quickly having to turn on each other to survive.
Exactly. And you mentioned socialism, communism. I see these Black Friday scenes as another argument against collectivism. The bigger the crowd, the bigger the social group, the more selfish and brutal it appears to become. So whereas the argument, with collectivism is for the greater good, everybody bands together, we treat each other the same, we take care of everybody. As these scenes show in America, the opposite happens. People become more brutal and selfish. The strong men rule, the weak suffer. So whereas a society based on individualism, which is based on a moral foundation of protecting everybody's rights and having true equality, would, resemble a more free, more fair society, more caring for other people, this to me represents collectivism. It's selfish. The bigger the crowd gets, the more selfish they get, which is, from the social psychology angle, extraordinary popular delusions and the madness of crowds. It all goes back to that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what you see is, combine this with these knockout games that are happening here, you see a total devaluation, a total disrespect for other people as people, and you see this shopping that's going on Thursdays. I see a breakdown of the family. We'll be right back.
50 years, iodine.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex on this Friday after Thanksgiving. And I'm talking to Paul Joseph Watson of Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com. And he did a video earlier today about the contrast between Walmart craziness and violence in the shopping centers and contrasted that to zombies. Paul, we had also a tradition here in America that unfortunately we see being gobbled up with this Black Friday, and that's Thanksgiving. That was a time that was also a period of time that was kind of unique to the United States. You don't have Black Friday in UK, as you mentioned, it's starting to come in, but with Thanksgiving, it was really a nice thing that we had here in America. It was a time that families reflected on what they meant to each other, what had happened in the last year, what God had done in their lives, the blessings that they had had. And it was a time that was kind of rooted in a remembrance of a real hardship that the first settlers from Europe who came to this country experienced when they came here, a time of starvation and privation and how they pulled themselves out of that. That seems to be being eclipsed now by this more shallow consumerism that's being pushed on us by the big box retailers.
Well, if you actually read the motivation behind some of these people who engage in this behavior, they will justify it by saying that time, that shopping time, is time spent with their loved ones. And they've actually grouped themselves together into a kind of Hunger Games style team. And they treat this as a competition, this rabid, mad dash to get products off shelves. They treat it as a sport. That's what they say in the interviews that I read today. And of course, the motivation to get a deal is complete bunkum because, you know, they mark the prices up months before Black Friday anyway, so then the discounts seem more value than they actually are. The 98% markup on the other products that the shoppers buy while they're in there compensates for it for the big retailers. So they actually make larger profit margins during the holiday season, proving that, you know, the idea that they're losing big on giving all these massive discounts is a complete hoax. So that's not the motivation really now that people engage in this Black Friday zombie madness. It's a sport, it's a competition, it's a Hunger Games style bread and circus. And you know, it's the acquisition of physical objects, otherwise known as retail therapy, which is another mechanism through which people drown out the nagging voice of conscience and the hopelessness, in many cases, of their real lives. They're trying to tune out of reality.
Yeah, Alex was just talking about that earlier this week. He was out earlier this week in Dripping Springs, and he was hiking through the wilderness, and he talked to people, and they said, you know, we like what you have to say, we agree with what you say, but it's just so depressing, we can hardly listen to it. And he was making the case that, you know, reality is what it is. You need to face it and then do something positive about it. You're not going to feel any better by just ignoring this until it comes crashing down on you, and the consequences of ignoring the problems just continually build until everything implodes on you. That's what we're telling people. But as you're pointing out, people like to just ignore that. They like to look at the happy news that's being presented by the media. They like to not look too carefully at the clouds on the horizon.
Well, again, it's a hoax. I mean, knowledge is power, but it's also happiness. I find the more knowledge I acquire, the happier I get. I mean, in terms of consumerism, you know, 10 years ago when I first got my first decent paycheck, yes, I would buy items that I didn't need, didn't really want, just because I could. But I find, I don't know about you, David, but as you mature more spiritually, objects actually repel you. The more physical objects you acquire, the more weighed down you feel.
That's right.
And you start moving towards a kind of minimalist thing where the less objects around you, the happier you are. So, you know, you flip the complete other way.
Yeah, it is. It is actually a burden that you start to feel. They couldn't put it any better than that. I realized that when we started moving here from North Carolina, how many things just started accumulating over the decades, and you just want to get rid of these millstones around your neck is what they feel like, and that's just materialism. What you really value is the connections with other people, and that's what I see being lost in not only this consumerism, but also in these knockout games. Because in the past, we were seeing this kind of violence in Walmart on Black Friday, but now it's coming out where just for the sheer fun of it. As you mentioned, they've turned Black Friday into a kind of a Hunger Games game. Well, they're turning brutalizing other people into a game. There's absolutely no feeling for other human beings.
And again, that relates back to social media, where, like video games, you know, there's no requirement to see other people to treat them as equal human beings, like in social media. And then, of course, happy slapping in the UK, which is what, you know, the knockout game is in America. And again, it's all about narcissism, getting your videos on YouTube, getting them on social media. That all feeds into it.
Wow, that's amazing. We're talking to Paul Joseph Watson in England, and we're going to be right back. And Paul, we had a story that we covered earlier this week that you covered, was up on Drudge, about killer robots, and we're going to touch on that as we come back, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex on this Friday after Thanksgiving. I've got Paul Joseph Watson on the line from the UK, but Before we go back to Paul, and actually, Paul, we can talk about what Mark has to say. I've got Mark from the District of Columbia that's been hanging for over an hour, and I want to get his comments on Black Friday, and we can talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the killer robot campaign that Noel Sharkey was on the show a couple of days ago. Mark, DC, what did you want to tell us about Black Friday?
How are you, sir?
Doing fine.
First of all, I'm boycotting Black Friday, and I just urge everybody else to do so. I spent last night, I stumbled onto something, a whole book online called the Nazi Hydra in America. And it breaks down so much of what you guys talk about. It's frightening. This gets into 4 generations of the Bush clan, totally tied with Nazis. Alan Dulles, head of CIA, fired by Kennedy, total Nazi. John J. McCloy, who I have not heard you guys talk about, maybe you have before, but this is a man who, this is the guy who made sure that the trains to the death camps were not bombed. He's the guy who oversaw the internment camps for the Japanese. He's the guy put in charge of post-war Germany and let all the mass murdering head Nazis right out of prison. And he was put on the Warren Commission. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
The fix was in. This is a guy who was the head of the World Bank. He was the head of the CFR. He's considered one of the great wise men of foreign policy. And he's one of the biggest scumbags in American history. I spent a degree from a major, very well-renowned university, which I won't name right now. And I studied foreign policy. I studied government and politics. And not once was this man's name, other than briefly in passing, did it ever come up. And it's just like a glass of cold water thrown in your face when you wake up to some of this material.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, there's so many parallels. It's in post-World War I Germany, depressed economy, putting the fluoride in the water just like the Nazis did. Basically controlling all American media back in the day was totally pro-Nazi, leading up to and all the way.
Oh yeah, there were a lot of financial ties to the Bush family, the patriarch Prescott Bush, and of course there are a lot of books that talk about this. One of the ones that I thought was really very interesting about Operation Paperclip was A Terrible Mistake. It was about the death of Frank Olson, and he was a scientist who worked for the biological and chemical research departments of the CIA, and it was interesting. It's very, very well-researched, very factual book based on recently declassified documents that were classified for 50, 60 years. It breaks down in that book the story of what happens to this scientist who went along with all this criminal activity, and that's what we're trying to tell people over and over again, to the policemen who stand there a week ago pushing back people about free speech protests. We're saying, this is the world that you're creating. You're going to have to live in this, and they're going to turn on you. Don't think that you're getting a pass from all of this. You're going to be one of the ones that they turn against, just like they turned against the scientist Frank Olson. And also in part of that book, they pointed out how these Nazi scientists, these Japanese scientists who had been involved in war crimes, how they were brought to the U.S., they were given very high-level positions in the research departments. But I think you made a good point there. Thank you so much for calling and for hanging on for such a long time, Mark and DC. I think the point he was making, too, at the beginning there, Paul, was about boycotting. Not just Black Friday, but especially boycotting what's going on Thanksgiving. If you don't show up, they're not going to make the employees leave their families to go work on those days, are they?
Well, that's right. And there's actually a growing backlash. The BBC did a report on it today. Against Black Friday. They've got a boycott day, which is the Buy Nothing Day, I believe it's called. And also trending on Twitter, hashtag Black Friday body count. Actually, numerous injuries last night and today. Of course, 4 people have died since 2006.
Wow.
Shootings, stabbings, everything going on today. But even the BBC is now reporting that there's a massive backlash against it. So hopefully the kind of scenes that we've witnessed are on the wane.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Now, a week ago, it was just a week ago, that Alex and crew were in Dallas doing a free speech protest because the city government had shut down any demonstrations, did not allow people like Jim Tague, who had been one of the people that was shot on that fateful day, would not allow him in because he did not uphold to the official story about what happened that day. So Alex and crew went up there to protest this restriction of free speech, and you and I were not there, but I know you were watching. I was watching. As we saw the police come out and push back on the demonstrators, they were led into this area by other police, and then the federal police, the sheriffs who were coming out of Homeland Security trailer just came out and started immediately hitting, punching people, shoving them. As I looked at that, I was thinking about how robotic they looked and how dangerous they looked when they stood there in line, the contempt on these people's face. But there's a real concern about killer robots. We talked on Tuesday to Noel Sharkey. Actually, it was Wednesday. We talked to Noel Sharkey about the campaign to stop killer robots. I know that he's in the UK. You've been following him. You did an article on that interview that got picked up by the Drudge Report. And he had an amazing revelation there that you used as a headline, and that is he fully expected to see robots used for crowd control, armed with tasers.
Well, that's right. And I mean, it's coming sooner than you think. But he actually did a report a few months ago now called 2084 Big Robot is Watching You. Mm-hmm. And Sharkey predicted that within the next 30 years, quote, humanoid walking robots would be more in use for crowd control at games, strikes and riots. Robots will patrol city centres and trouble spots where fights are likely to break out. So there he's talking about them being armed with tasers. Already, I did a video report back in April about some technology out of Zurich University, which they said would be used for homeland security purposes. And even the inventor of that drone technology said it could be used to, quote, abuse humans. And that was a network of, could be, yeah. And that was the creator of the technology. But it was basically a network of drones that carried nets. And they said it could be used to snatch suspects off the streets. So They're talking about that already. They've got rudimentary drones that already do that. They're quite small at the moment, but they're going to ramp it up.
This is really horrific stuff that we're looking at. When I look at this, when we saw the trailer for the movie Elysium, that's exactly what we saw. We saw these brutal robots just smacking people who were standing in line, used for crowd control and law enforcement. I had high hopes for that movie. It turned out to be a very cheap analogy for Obamacare and illegal immigration. It didn't really seem to address that, but that was a very powerful scene that was in the trailer. It's something that I think people should be very concerned about. And he's going around and talking to the UN and talking to the governments, raising awareness of the public, raising awareness in the press. But I want to see more awareness raised of the scientists who are creating these things, just like I was talking about Frank Olson in the past segment. You know, when you're a scientist and you're doing something, or an engineer, it's not just enough to tackle something because it's an intellectual problem that you can solve. You need to think about how it's going to be used, the ethical consequences of it.
Well, the vast majority of this technology is being developed by DARPA, which, of course, is the Pentagon. Yes. And people like Sharkey and others have said that these robots are going to be used to kill people. That's their ultimate, application. And DARPA has even admitted that in several different instances. They're now starting to roll them out on the battlefield. But initially, it's going to be about, as you said, robots checking IDs at checkpoints, alerting authorities if necessary to suspects. And, anyone can be a suspect now. And in fact, you mentioned Elysium, the new RoboCop film actually depicts robots patrolling the streets of Iraq. Yes. Biometrically scanning citizens' faces against a database. And one of the plot lines of the films is, Americans are robophobic. They won't accept this.
That's right. So, and of course, that was being, in the film, that was being driven by the military-industrial complex, or we could say the police-state industrial complex now. The same people that have been creating these weapons of war that have kept the United States at war continuously for the last 60 years, those same large corporations are looking for increased profits. They're never satisfied. They always want, as Rockefeller said, just a little more. And the way they're going to get that is to create this police state industrial complex, sell the weapons. They're already bringing the weapons home from Iraq and Afghanistan, but they want to create new crowd control weapons, as they call them, non-lethal weapons. But they're not non-lethal at all. We see people dying from tasers all the time.
Well, precisely. And I think the point is about handing that power over to robots is, by making them autonomous, you remove the responsibility for death or injury. If it was the robot's decision to go ahead and taser somebody who ended up dying, then they're not going to fear for legal retribution, are they? And there's going to be no chain of responsibility behind that.
Yes.
So that's one of the benefits for law enforcement authorities. But the key point is, you know, we already have flying robots killing people all over the world. They're called predator drones.
Yes.
They kill 50 innocent civilians for every suspected terrorist they take out. So to think of this as some way off in the future thing is naive, because it's already happening.
Yes.
Way up. If you want to get way into the future, then even the co-founder of Skype wrote that the eventual progression of robots will be about them taking over, quote, the speed and direction of technological progress itself, and actually shaping the environment of planet Earth to their own ends. So once these robots get some kind of sentient intelligence and under their own auspices have a survival mechanism, then you're going to find that they shape their environment for their own purposes. And as the co-founder of Skype said, we're just going to be, a bug on the windscreen to them. They don't care about us. So that's where it's going in the future. That's where people like Ray Kurzweil have said that it's heading.
And when Ray Kurzweil looked at the Atlas robot that DARPA funded, his comments were, oh, that's great. Now all it needs is a brain. I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying, do we want to give that kind of monopoly of force to a few people in government? Because that's what's happening with these drone strikes. It's a few people that can remotely control a tremendous amount of force. It gives a tremendous amount of leverage to the government, to the police department, to use against people. It's a very disturbing trend, in my opinion, and we need to get people to understand just how imminent and how dangerous this is. It seems like science fiction to so many people, and yet we can see these robots that are being built by Boston Dynamics, and I find them to be very frightening, because I can see the potential for abuse, because we already see that technology being abused, as you mentioned, with the drone strikes.
Exactly. And I think ultimately it's about the total obliteration of human liberty on an industrial mechanized scale.
Exactly.
That's what it's ultimately about, because once you give these robots power of sentient awareness and the power to act on their own accord, they're just going to kill people because it's in their own interest to do so. If they're in a battlefield mode, they're being developed by DARPA, the Pentagon. And the Pentagon's actually developed a device that thinks and looks like a human brain, which they plan to install in these robots so they can navigate completely of their own accord and they can learn as they progress through their environment. So they've already got brains, human-like brains developed, synthetic brains, which they plan to put into these robots. So it's frightening where it's going. But you mentioned Kurzweil again. You know, the trendy transhumanists all seem to worship him as this icon of the technological singularity. But if you actually read his book, which I don't think many of them have from cover to cover, The Age of Spiritual Machines, his lust for, robotics and transhumanism, it comes across to me as some kind of creepy sexual fetish. If you actually get to the end of the book, he talks about a woman leaving her husband for a computer, uploading her own intelligence into the computer so that she can then have sex with the computer. And then at the end of the book, Kurzweil joins in as a kind of threesome. It's completely creepy. I think his whole thing is based on some weird sexual fetish. I mean,
and he also thinks that he's going to live forever. You know, that's the original lie from the Garden of Eden, that you'll become like God. He really does think he's going to become like God. Even if he could transfer his mental processes and make a copy of his brain, essentially, and put it in a robotic thing, that's still not him. That's just a copy of him. He's still going to die. He doesn't want to come to the grips with that fact, and so he is working towards this crazy invention that he's got. But it's also very disturbing because we realize where this is headed. We realize how dangerous this is, and we realize that even though he's not going to be able to really transfer himself into a robot, these people could kill an awful lot of people. It's just like the Artilect Wars. I don't know if you've seen that book or not, where the guy's talking about gigadeath between people who are pushing this artificial intelligence and the people who are trying to push back against it, people that he calls the Terrans. And he predicts that the author of that book predicts that that's going to happen and that we're going to have billions of people die. It's going to be one of the most horrific periods of human history, but they think they're going to win. They think the Arlex will win. They think the transcendent, transhumanist singularity people are going to win.
I think a lot of it, David, is the fact that Kurzweil especially is just a very insecure individual who has a massive fear of death, and this is how he compensates for it.
Yes. Exactly.
That's how it comes across to me.
And he has a lot of financial resources behind him now, being chief scientist for Google. So there's a lot of money behind it. I mean, Google is funding this race to the moon. I think it ends December 31st, 2015. Somebody can get to the moon. They can fly or travel across its surface a certain distance, make a couple of broadcasts or whatever. There's a large prize involved in that. Google has so much money that they can fund these development projects. Now, there's nothing harmful with the moon launch, but some of this other stuff, even taking away our ability to drive our own cars, that's where the Google self-driving cars are headed. You're going to find people that are going to be priced out in the insurance market, the compulsory insurance market that we have here in the United States. If you want to drive your own car, I'm sure that's going to be at a premium because, of course, the cars can do it so much more safely than you'll be able to do it. They're going to basically shut us down and control our movements in their entirety with that.
Well, that's what Renault recently announced with their electric cars. You're going to rent the battery off them and they can shut it down at any point. So it's outside of your control again. In a car in 2013, you're basically sitting inside a computer, not a vehicle, and that's only going to get more sophisticated. But with Google, I mean, Google is Skynet. They're creating an artificial reality which people are going to be able to insert themselves into and live an alternative life. They're behind all of this stuff. It's not going to apply to the majority of people.
One of the things that Professor Sharkey was talking about was the rapid development of technology in fighter jets and the consequences that might have for war. When we come back, let's talk about what's going on in China right now. We'll be right back with Paul Joseph Watson from the UK, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. On this Friday after Thanksgiving, I'm talking to Paul Joseph Watson in the UK. And Paul and I were just talking about Dr. Noel Sharkey's campaign to stop killer robots. And when he was on 2 days ago, he was talking about the rapid development of technology in unmanned aerial vehicles that are fighter jets, traveling at supersonic speeds, taking off and landing on aircraft carriers. The amazing advances that are being made in that. And as we're looking at that, Paul, I'm thinking about how easy it's going to be for governments to get into a war when they feel like they don't have as much to lose if they're just going to lose an unmanned aerial vehicle. But eventually, as Dr. Sharkey pointed out, it's going to come down to people dying, isn't it?
Well, exactly, because, you're going to have humanitarian concerns that are caused by any war. But yeah, they eventually plan to roll out huge battlefield armies of robots to fight each other under that justification that humans won't be slaughtered in the process. If you believe that wars can be fought without humans dying, then I think you're very much naive.
Yeah, and eventually one side of robots is going to start killing humans, at least one side of those robots. Now, what's happening with China now? We see there's this map. Pull up this map, guys, for the viewers that are looking at it on CNN. We see these multiple overlapping claims of territory that are conflicts between Taiwan and China and South Korea and Japan. And what we see here really is kind of looks like a Venn diagram, but it's really a Venn diagram for war. It's amazing to look at these aerial shots of these islands and you don't see anything on them, but we've seen people go to war for lesser things, haven't we, Paul?
Well, World War I started with the assassination of a relatively obscure archduke in Sarajevo.
That's right.
Having normalcy bias and thinking this can't happen to our generation is short-sighted. But this is about, obviously, the Senkaku Islands, the East China Sea. China set up this air defense zone, which, by the way, Japan, US, and Russia have had for decades over their own territories. But apparently, China's not allowed to do that. Almost immediately, the US sent in 2 B-52 bombers in an astounding provocation. This was all while Americans were fighting over Xboxes, by the way, literally sliding into World War III. But Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who is with The Telegraph, he's no tinfoil hat wearing lunatic, said, quote, "We are clearly sliding into a new Cold War. One misjudgment by either side could change our world entirely." So now you've got Japan, South Korea flying their warplanes into this zone. Now you've got military professors in China saying that if they keep doing this provocation, quote, China will be forced to respond. And they issued a veiled threat last weekend that they would shoot down planes entering this region. So initially, of course, they did nothing. People said, oh, it's just China being a paper tiger again. But they've since issued statements saying that they will take military action if these provocations keep occurring. And imagine if China scrambled warplanes off the coast of America, what the freak-out response would be. And yet this is happening now on an almost daily basis, where the US, South Korea, Japan flies through this air zone, taunting China with threats to shoot down the aircraft. And, you know, it's bubbling under the surface. It's not a massive story yet, but mainstream commentators are even saying that it could spark a new world war.
Yes. I've seen people make the comparison to the Monroe Doctrine with what's going on in Asia, that, as you mentioned, what would we do if China was doing flights and asserting territorial influence just off the coast of the U.S. or even off the coast of South America? We've seen the Cuban Missile Crisis in the past. But at the same time, China is really pushing it. It's a very dangerous situation. And as you pointed out, though, we're just really concerned about where we're going to get our next video game fix, or where we can find a big screen TV to pacify us for a little bit more time. Well, thanks for joining us on this Friday after Thanksgiving, Paul. I really appreciate it, and very, very helpful insights. We're going to be back on Sunday at 4 p.m. with Alex Jones. That's 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern.